Welcome everyone back to Pommy and Oz. Hope we're all doing really well. If you're new around here, hit that like button, hit the subscribe. It really does help the channel out. Thank you so much for your support. We're really getting a lot of subs, so it's great to see you. You can go a step further and become a member of the channel. Loads of members-only content coming over Christmas. And what we're here today is we're going to do, you asked for me to rate them, so rate your off-season. So what I've done is kind of done like a little basic template using TIERMAKERs. So if you are interested, we'll put this up and you can send it to... drop it in one of the comment sections on social media. You can't do it on YouTube, unfortunately, because YouTube is very restricted in how we can interact with each other. But let's do it. So what I've done here is just done like the base ins and outs of physical things. So players, basically. We'll talk a little bit about future picks and things like that. If you are interested in the future picks and what you've sold and what you've bought and how 2025, stay tuned. Later this week, we'll be having individual off-season reviews and a preview for 2025, so I can't wait to get into that for each team. So here we are. So what you'll see here is really exciting, I think, and it is literally, we've done it with base, real simple metric. I haven't gone too crazy, but we've got wow, watch out, which means I think it's better than what I expected it to be. Very good, on par, meaning I expected to see that after the trade period to now. Expected more at a big wait and see, which basically means I'm looking at this as, oh gosh, like this has surprised me. So let's get into it. So we'll start off with Adelaide Crows. So Adelaide Crows, I think, have been really fascinating for mine. They lost this season Lockie Gollan, Will Hamill, Elliot Himmelberg, Ned McElhinney, Patrick Parnell, and Rory Sloane the Great retired. Isaac Cumming coming in, Sid Draper, Neil Bullen, James Peatling, and Tyler Welsh coming in. I really do like this period here. I think that they've done well. I think they've got some more depth in. I think that they've brought in some established players. The Neil Bullen trade I thought was fantastic. The free agent and the trade that they did there. Tyler Welsh, great key forward prospect, and Sid Draper was my boy. From where they finished last season, I think where they've got to kick on and really go hammer and tongs almost. I think that's a really interesting one. They did trade out a future second, but they have a plethora of future thirds and future fourths. So the building box of deals, which says to me that their time for trading is gone. So I'm going to give this a very good. I really did like their trade off-season period. I think that's been very good. Brisbane, obviously the reigning premiers, and a very quiet period for them. They lost Joe Danaher, a big loss. They lost Kane Lane, Jared Loynes retired, Madden, Michael, Pryor delisted, Harry Sharp also traded out. Levi Ashcroft, though, potential pick one they got for 5. That was a huge win. Sam Marshall, I think they got him a little bit later than planned. Ty Gallop probably was against what they thought. And they got Sam Day in on the pre-season draft period. So a short temporary fix for Mr. Danaher. I think this might be controversial, right? But I'm going to say very good. I don't think it's genius because I think we expected a lot of it. But I do think where they got Levi Ashcroft, it allowed them to easily match a bit. They're not in deficit or anything like that. Ty Gallop's nice and athletic, a real impressive little player. So I'm excited with that. I'm excited with that for them. Carlton, they lost Domaku, Jack Carroll, Matt Carroll, David Cunningham, Sam Durden, Matt Kennedy traded, Caleb Marchbank, Jack Martin, Alex Murkoff, and Matt Owens. So just based on their outs, I don't really think they've lost that much, to be honest. Matt Owens, you could argue, but I've been quite hot on this. If he's your best small forward, you ain't doing much. I think Carlton have got to go a different way and bring a more dynamic small in there or develop it themselves, which they've really backed them in. Jagger Smith, great pickup there, was the top 2 in our draft rankings. Harry O'Farrell, Nick Haynes coming in, which I think is a huge lateral upgrade to what we have, especially with the experience. Harry Charlson coming in, Matt Duffy on the category B, Lucas and Ben Camporelli. The picks later than most people thought. But where I thought they would be. I would say that that's on par. I don't think it's spectacular because you've got to look at Carlton did trade out future assets. Brisbane, obviously, I thought they did very well, which we didn't talk about, for getting in a load of future thirds. Great pickups for Danny Annabelle. Carlton, obviously, did trade a future asset, so Jagger Smith has to be very good. Obviously, no pressure on him today, but he has to. Let's have a look at Collingwood Football Club. So Collingwood Football Club, they lost Aiden Begg, Jack Bytel, Josh Carmichael, Josh Eyre, Nathan Krieger, Nathan Murphy earlier in the season, John Noble and Joe Richards. They brought in Tim Membry, which I think is a great pickup, Harry Perriman, which I think is a great pickup, Danny Houston, great pickup. And then I think they did incredibly well getting in Joel Cochran, Sydney NGA, Charlie West and Will Hayes. I do like their pickups. I think what they've lost, they've gained dramatically. John Noble, huge upgrade, is Dan Houston. I think Nathan Murphy was always going to be hard to replace, but I think they've brought in Tim Membry, which is the key forward for now. They've got Will Hayes, an elite runner outside. They've got Joel Cochran, a real project defender, and Charlie West in there. I look, Joe Richards, yes, he was best 22. John Noble, you've massively improved. The other guys were in and around where they were. I'd say that this is a very good period for them. They've spent a lot, though, it has to be said, but this is better than what I thought. When I looked at their off-season, when I saw what the picks they had, I thought, okay, this is going to be funny. Remember, they have traded out future first like Carlton, but they have got their second to do some damage. They've also got the benefit of having a father-son next year, so that is impressive. Essendon, then, well, they've brought in Angus Clark, Archer Day Weeks, amazing, Cale Guerin, Zach Johnson, Isaac Keiko, Jaden Newen, Reese Unwin and Pryor this morning on the SSP. They lost Kane Baldwin, Jaden Davey, Dyson Heppel, Nick Hine, Jaden Hunter, Jake Kelly, Jake Stringer traded, Tex Wanganeen and Sam Wiedemann. I think when you look at Essendon's trade period, Matt Rosa has done very well because he also bought in a first for next year as well in this period as well, which I think is a huge win. They've also got a couple of seconds, which hasn't been talked about, so they've got some really good points for next year. I'm going to be bold here and say, wow, watch out. I think this was phenomenal. Phenomenal. Like, from where they were when the season ended to what the players they've brought in, where they've brought them in, to what they've lost. Very, very good. So remember them rankings. On par, I expected that kind of trade period or off-season. Very good. A little bit better than I expected. Well, watch out. Okay, that surprised me. Fremantle Football Club. So, like, when you look at what they've lost next year, they haven't really lost an awful amount. They've gained a third rounder. They've got their first intact. They lost Josh Corbett, Tom Emmett, Ethan Hughes, Max Noble, Sebiat Kjörk, Ethan Stanley, Matt Tabernet and Conrad. They brought in Shai Bolton, Sharon Carr, Charlie Nichols, Murphy Reid and Aidan Riddle. They also brought in Quinton Narkle on the SSP, which is a real wait and see. So when you actually break it down there, I think that that's pretty healthy for them, particularly when they traded massively out of this first round. To get Murphy Reid is a huge win. To keep their 2025 picks and gain one is a real big win. This one here, I'm going to give another wow, watch out. I thought this was sensational. When I heard they were linked with Shai Bolton and the price they were paying, I was worried about their draft hand. To get Murphy Reid where they did, I think he's absolutely exceptional and well done to Fremantle Football Club. Geelong, they lost Phoenix Foster, Joe Thurfey, Mitch Hardy, Tom Hawkins, Emerson Jacker, Oscar Murdoch, Brandon Parfit, Gary Rowan, Zach Toohey and James Willis. When you look at their draft hand for next year, they won't use them. We know Geelong won't. They've still got their picks intact, which is always a huge dub for Geelong. They brought in Cillian Burke on the Category B, as we know. Lennox Hoffman, who's a real good project. Xavier Izovich, Caton Motafe Forbes, Jack Martin, Jacob Mollier, which was a surprise, Joe Pike from Geelong, Jay Polkenhorn, Patrick Resco and Bailey Smith. This is a hard one to ascertain because I think when you look at what they lost, right? They didn't really lose too much. Bringing in Bailey Smith, I think, is already better than all their outs. Their draft, though, is really, really surprising to me. But it is really important to say that they have brought in projects around the players that they want to get better, particularly when you look at Matafei Forbes and his work that he's going to be learning off Jack Martin. And I can see him playing down the back half of the ground. So this is going to be really, really interesting of how this works. So some real wait and sees here for me. But I am going to put this on par. And the reason I'm going to put it on par is we expected Bailey Smith. It was the worst kept secret in there. And then I think their draft, when I look at the players that were around there, I do think my gut feel says they could have done more. Gold Coast, then, always interesting. The team that monopolises it, they got in a plethora of future firsts next year, which is really, really interesting. And they retained their second, which are the key building blocks of the list. They lost Rory Atkins, Sandy Brock, Levi Casbolt, Sam Day, Brendan Ellis, Oscar Folkhead, Jack Lukosius, Darcy McPherson, Jack Mahoney, Huego Yo, Will Rowlands, and James Stetus. They got in... Very interesting. They got in Liam Lombardo, fantastic player. They got Danny Rioli, John Noble, Lachlan Gulbin came in as a Category B, Zach Evans came in as a Category B, Asher Eason and Cooper Bell. I think they're better. I think they're definitely better. When I look at what they've lost, I don't think they've lost too much. They've got a logo that still makes me question it, but I will say that this is a very good period. I think when I looked at it before and I heard all the prices that were called about, I was very surprised about it. GWS up next, and a very interesting little proposition here. The GWS, they had Isaac Cumming-Leave, Cooper Hamilton, Nick Haynes, Adam Kennedy, James Peatlin, Harry Perriman and Braden Pruce, which is probably no surprise. It's probably about time he left. They do keep their first in next year. They gained a second next year, which gives them a bit of movability. Obviously, the key building blocks and then flip seconds, early thirds they don't have. They brought in, though, in the trade period, Jack Stringer, Logan Smith, Harry Oliver, Jack Ohm, Oliver Hannaford, Joshua Delana, and Cody Angrave. I think, apart from the Harry Oliver one, which I'm really stoked for them, I think this is an on-par one. Is what I would have expected. I wasn't blown away by what they did, and I'm not really disappointed with it. So that is an interesting one. Hawthorn Football Club, as always, when you look at future picks next year, they did a lateral deal. They got Carlton, so they'll hope to get a better pick in their first. They traded away their future first, though, to the Eagles, so they got that back, which is pretty impressive. They also laterally traded their second, but aside from that, they have got no picks in the third round until the fourth. So that is an interesting one there. They did bring in, though, Tom Barras, Josh Battle, Cody Anderson, Matty Hill, Noah Mraz, and Jamie Henry. They lost Denver Granger Barras, Cooper Stevens, Josh Bennett, Jack O'Sullivan, Ethan Phillips, Clay Tucker, and Chad Wingard. I don't think that they lost very much, but I think them key defenders are very, very impressive, and it's going to be interesting how that works. So I think that's a very good deal. Melbourne Football Club, they lost Gus Brayshaw, Benny Brown, Kaya Farris White, Lockie Hunter, Neil Bullen in the trade, Josh Shackey, Joel Smith, and Adam Tomlinson. When you look at their trades for next year, right, they have no first, which they traded to Essendon. They have a second, so they've spent, and then they've got a late third, and then their fourth and fifth are intact. They brought in Harry Sharp, Ricky Menther on the Cap B, Xavier Lindsay, Harvey Langford, so they got some good returns from their picks. Aiden Johnson and Tom Campbell on the free agency. Again, this is kind of on par, really, I think. It's kind of like Carlton. It's a wait and see on what Harvey Langford does. If Jagger Smith and Harvey Langford kill it, which I'm sure they will, we will trade this differently. It's just my gut feel on where they are at the moment. Up next, North Melbourne. North Melbourne had a very entertaining off-season, they went hard in this and they gave up quite a bit, you could see, but they did lose Blake Jury, Hamish Free, Hugh Greenwood, Charles Lazaro, Bigoa, Tyler Sellers, Liam Shields, Jaden Stevenson, Curtis Taylor and Taron Thomas are off their books. When you look next year, they did give up a future first to trade back in there, but they do have 2 provisional key early seconds, which allows them to trade back in. I'm not so against this future trade for North Melbourne, because if he does bottom out, their 2026 and 2027 will allow them to go back in. Caleb Daniel, Jack Darling, Jacob Constanti, Finn O'Sullivan, Luke Parker, River Stevens, Luke Urquhart, and Matty Whitlock came in. This may surprise people because people are going to get really bogged down on that future first, right? And it's the same with the Essendon argument. Oh, if they kept their pick, they would have had... No, they wouldn't. Someone would have bid on Isaac Caker. I like the boldness of this. So I'm going to say it's very good because I don't think it's as bad. The damage of being a bottom 4 club like they are is if it does go wrong, their future picks have so much value to get back in to next year's draft. Whereas Carlton, where I've probably graded them a little bit harsher, teams are going to expect Carlton to be top 4. So that pick is less worth than them 2 years. It affects Carlton less. They have got Cody Walker later in 2026, but I think North are in a good spot. I did enjoy their trade period. People have been harsh on it, but that is what it is. Port Adelaide are a really intriguing one. When we look at their picks next year, it's well worth noting that Port Adelaide don't have a first. They have a second, though. Right, and then when you look at their routes, Tom Clurey, Charlie Dixon, Francis Evans, Danny Houston, Carl Marshall, Tom McCullum, Trent McKenzie, Quinton Narco and Tom Scully. When you look at what they brought in, right, on the trade period they brought in Rory Atkins, they brought in Joe Richards, right, and they brought in Jack Lukosius, which I do like, but Jack Lukosius is untapped talent. Jack Whitlock came in, Christian Miraz, Tom Cochrane, Joe Berry, Benny Barrett came in the trade period. This is probably going to be controversial, and please don't come at me, right? I think they got some good players in, but I think Dan Houston is a big loss. I think what they brought in is good, but I feel like I don't think Port are top 8 anymore. And I think if you lost Dan Houston, I think you could have brought in more. Now, I don't think they've overpaid from Lukosius. I think if they can tap his talent, that is going to be huge. And I think he's going to be very good. And I think Jack Whitlock is going to be a very good replacement for Charlie Dixon. I wasn't a fan. And that's just my personal opinion. I do think it could be long-term one we say, wow, watch out. But at this stage, I look at it. Richmond up next. They lost Liam Baker, Shai Bolton, Makehelina, Matty Coulthard, Noah Cumberland, Jack Graham, Dylan Grimes, Dustin Martin, Marleon Pickett, Sam Nathis, Daniel Rioli, right? They got in, this is like a great trade period. They got in a future first from North, which could be a top 5 pick. If they tank, that's really bad. They traded out of the second round, which I've got no issue with, and the third, but they've got some prime specimen to really sit here and go, if we do finish 17th, 16th next year, we can maybe bring some more talent. We've got the pull over North Melbourne because they're a big club. I look at Richmond's trade period and draft period, and I think it's phenomenal, right? They targeted this draft, and I think Layla Smiley, Traynor, Taj Houghton, John T. Fall, Harry Armstrong, and Jasper Olga, A-grade recruits. Straight away, wow, watch out. You've got a future first in there as well. So, very, very impressive. St Kilda up next, right? They have their first, which is a real key cornerstone. No second, though, which is really interesting. They traded that second to Essendon. And this is going to be interesting because they lost Matty Allison, Josh Battle, Riley Bonner, Tom Campbell, Jack Hayes, Ollie Houghton, Tim Membry, which I wasn't surprised, Benny Patton, Seb Ross, and James Van S. They brought in Jack McRae in that trade period, which I think is a great get. Jackie Carroll, it's a good little stopgap. Toby Travella, Tyree, Patrick Said, James Barrett, Eamon Armstrong, and Hugh Boxall, and Alex Dodson, who's the slider of the draft. When I look at where their draft picks are, in my honest opinion, Alex Tyree coming in and Toby Travella, I'll definitely want for the future. Toby, I love Alex Tyree. You know my reservations on him. I did expect them to trade that 10 down and break it up and maybe go. I think they made up for that, though, with Dodson and Jack Carroll, but I was expecting more mids. Now, Jack McRae, I think, is a great acquisition, and for now, but I honestly expected more of St Kilda, and maybe I'm being harsh. Maybe I am being harsh, but I thought it could have been better. Sydney, Swans. For me, this is a really interesting one to judge, because I look at next year, right, and next year that they have their peaks intact, they haven't done anything too crazy. That's always a huge dub, I've got to say, and I think we'd all agree on that. And then when I look at what Sydney have lost, Harry Arnfoot, Arnold, Constanti, McGaw, McAndrew, Parker, Reid, Vickery, not real much loss. What they brought in, though, is very interesting. Nothing on the trade period. Detoli, Bice, Riek Andrew, Bowman, Liedler, and Patton. I expected more. I think that they need kind of... I wanted them to be a bit more aggressive. I think their picks are really good, but I don't think their picks are now, apart from Bice. I think Patton is kind of like that lateral deal, and that's an interesting one for me. Eagles up next, and they made the boldest trade. They traded Art free in the draft, but they have their picks intact for next year. They've got 2 seconds, which really helps, and 2 firsts. They lost Barras, though, in that deal. Baker, Bergio, Cully, Darling, Edwards, Gaff, Jones, Rotham, True, and Witherden. I think the players that needed to be got rid of, they had to get rid of, right? I think, and this is going to surprise people, when I look at their recruitment, Graham coming in, Gregor coming in, Tom Gross, Matty Owie, Shanahan, Davis, Malachi Champion, Liam Baker, Bo Allen. Yes, they've lost Tom Barras, but it is worth noting that Tom Barras, for me, is that fascinating character of he's coming in my opinion, into them kind of realms of untapped talent, right? And the reason that I say that is you don't get 20-odd games for him, and I still think he's okay. And when you look at defenders for bad teams, I don't think the price that they got for him is too bad, right? The trade with Carlton looks even better now with what they've got. I'm going to say very good. I'm going to say very good, and that might surprise people. And then the doggies are very interesting, I think. Dominic Bededo, Charlie Clark, Caleb Daniel, Keith McRae, O'Driscoll, Repstra, and Smith out. Big losses, right? They have got their first next year. They've got their second next year. They've got no third, which is always an interesting one. But when I look at what they brought in, Matty Kennedy's an immediate stopgap for Smith. Lockie Jakes I like. Luke Kennedy I really like. Cooper Hines I really like. Josh Dolan and Sammy Davidson. I'm going to say that this is on par, and I think that's a huge result for what they did. So they are my selections. Let me know what you guys and girls think. Obviously, this is all subjective. I'd love to have a conversation with it. But we will be back next time for your individual analysis. I can't wait to do that. We're going to have a crack at your best 23, what I'm expecting for them. Peace, love, and light. Put me out.
I see her rolling up, Uber black Cadillac, high heel boots, and a sexy body full of tats. Baby's bad, oh baby's hella bad. I see her rolling up, Uber black Cadillac, high heel boots, and a sexy body full of tats. Baby's bad, oh baby's hella bad.